Szervusztok, szia mindenki! No, a YouTube-ra ismét fölkerült Mr. Spock által egy videó, ahol ő egy ilyen, hát nem mondom, hogy interjú, hanem beszélgetnek gyakorlatilag online Mr. Spock és J&h and Hyde. A beszélgetés lényege az a 3+2 versus mono, örök kérdés, esetekben örök háború, hogy melyik a jobb megoldás, miért, stb. És ezt a témát boncolgatják ők ketten. Aki esetleg nyomon követi az ő youtuberi tevékenységüket, az tudhatja azt, hogy Mr. Spock 3+2-t játszik a varokban. Var videóit mindig fölveszi és fölteszi. Sok esetben kommentálva is vannak ezek a videók. Én magam részéről őt nagyon szeretem nézni. Aki ezt a műfajt egy fokkal jobban műveli, az uklapak, de mindenféleképpen úgy gondolom, hogy Mr. Spock az a másik játékos, youtuber uklapakon kívül, aki nagyon nagy minőségben játszik, az én véleményem szerint. Jekyll and Hyde pedig 150 vagy 167, vagy nem tudom, tehát 100 plusz level szintű játékos, gyakorlatilag minden hőse megvan, minden pénze megvan rá, hogy bármit megtehessen, és mindezek mellett ő a monót preferálja. És kicsit azért ezen okoknál fogva is, de valamilyen szinten a monózásnak a lehetősége egy bizonyos szint alatt az igencsak pénztárca függvényének a kérdése. Hogy ez miért van így, az a beszélgetésből kiderül, következtetéseket le lehet vonni igazából. Tehát most konkrétan nyilván nem erről fognak beszélni, ez most az én véleményem volt. Én úgy gondolom, hogy ez nagyon érdekes megnézni, meghallgatni, elgondolkozni rajta, és ha újdonságot nem is kapunk ezzel, de legalább kapunk egy struktúrát, egy körvonalat arra vonatkozóan, amit eddig esetlegesen tudat alatt csináltunk, hogy miért van az, hogy valaki monózik, miért van az, hogy valaki 3+2-t játszik. Amennyiben valaki ezeket tudatosan csinálja, abban az esetben lehet neki ilyen felszabadító erejű ezt a videót megnézni, hogy kicsit önigazolást kaphasson a saját idézőjeles tevékenységére, tehát arra, hogy ezt a játékot, ezt milyen formában műveli, vagy csinálja. No, nem is ragoznám, sikerült letöltenem egy fordító programot, és ezt alá lehet rakni a YouTube-nak, úgyhogy az eredeti angol feliratot fogja nekünk magyarra fordítani. Én az előbb elkezdtem nézni, hát vannak benne olyan dolgok, amiket nyilván az ember nem ért, minden esetre ez így ebben a formában föl fog kerülni, és akkor utána esetleg majd egy másik videóban le fogom rövidíteni az itt elhangzottakat, átbeszélteket, hogy egy rövidebb képet tudjunk arról festeni, amiről ők beszélgettek, ha esetlegesen a feliratok miatt kicsit elcsúsznának ezek a dolgok. De aki nagyjából tudja, érti, hogy miről beszélgetnek ők, az úgy gondolom, hogy a feliratnak a slankításai fölött át fog tudni futni, és tudja majd értelmezni a szövegkörnyezetében, a megfelelő szövegkörnyezetben a tartalmat. No, hát akkor nézzük.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? So, welcome to a new mini series or series that I'm doing with Mr. Empires and Puzzles books here, where we want to present two sides of one subject to give you guys the fullest picture and help you decide what is right for you. So, in talking to each other and getting to know each other, we've come across a few subjects that we don't agree on, which is fine. And so, we want to talk about those things and give you the benefit of taking a little bit from both sides, choosing one or the other that works better for you. And also, I think there's value, we think there's value in showing that you can disagree with someone in a civil way, and that at the end of the day, it's a game, it's about having fun. If you enjoy one or the other more, then that's totally fine. So, this first conversation is going to be about 3-2 versus mono. So, the first question I want to ask our friend here, Mr. Empires and Puzzles Books, is what is his history with mono, and what, if any, experimentation outside of that has been done? I think if you've watched our channels for a while, and you should, so make sure you're subscribed to both of us. Um, I am pretty religiously a 3-2 player because that's the strategy that I prefer, and the opposite is true for our friend here. So I wanted to ask him about his sort of relation with that, and how that started.
Sure, thanks. And thanks for having me. I'm excited about this new series and to duke it out with you over a couple tough conversations from here, from starting with 3-2 versus mono and moving forward. So one, I just want to clarify, I'm predominantly, not strictly, but predominantly a mono player in war and raiding because I'm typically using 5-star heroes. In 3 and 4-star events, I spread out much more often with 3-2. And that has to do with my feelings on mana a little bit and just the pace of how those particular heroes work, at least my vibe when I'm playing with them. Uh, a couple things are different with 5-stars, which brought me to predominantly using mono. One, the mana troops make a difference to me. Two, the elemental links from the heroes of the month make a difference to me. They're not available to the 3 and 4 stars. I mean, they are if you use them with a 5-star, but in general, I'm attacking in War and Raid with 5s.
Mhm.
Uh, those are the two big things. And then, a third piece of that is the tile damage that gets magnified greatly when we're adding on multiple heroes with the same color. And to answer your question, that's how I think I first got into mono, was when I first started understanding the math that adding colored heroes of the same color starts magnifying the tile damage. And I think new players, when they don't have the roster, get turned on by the fact that they can kind of color stack and take out a big tough enemy if they're lucky and they get the right board.
Yeah.
And I think that feeling is what leads to some kind of misconceptions about what playing mono really is.
Yeah, for people that may not have seen it, because this is something that I watched and found interesting, you did a video probably a few months ago now, maybe 6 months ago, I'm not sure, where you did a pretty painstaking experiment showing how damage increases as you add additional heroes of the same color. And it seems like it maybe starts linear and then becomes exponential. And in my recollection, correct me if I'm wrong, was that by the time you added the fifth hero, you were doing about 7 times the damage of a single hero, I think it was.
Yeah, that is roughly how the math works out. So what happens is if you look at the damage equation and how, we have attack stats that are going against enemies' defense stats. If you look at the damage equation, there's an exponent in there after you deal with the fraction of attack and defense.
Hmm.
So what gets interesting is every time we add a hero of the same color, the tile damage adds up the attack stack of all heroes of that same color. So since we're adding that onto the attack stat, but the defense stat of who you're hitting stays the same, and then the exponent gets involved, it
Got it.
starts increasing. So it's kind of like a J curve. It goes up pretty quick.
Yeah.
So two heroes of the same color might hit 2.5 times, and 3 might hit closer to 4. But by the time you get up to 5 heroes, if you're full mono, the attack power of each individual tile is going to have about 6.5 to 7 times the power of just one. So it is a way to, realistically, if you're going into a fight with 5 guys, wouldn't you like to take 6 or 7 guys with you? It's just a
Yeah.
way of getting an overwhelming advantage.
Yeah, that is interesting, and especially I would also describe that as a mathematical advantage, and I think that dovetails nicely into what a lot of people see as the main drawback of mono, which is tile availability. And I think there can be a mathematical angle to that as well, of like, if you're choosing, 20% of the available colors, does that give you enough to get what you need? So I'm curious if, on that note, what do you think is a better strategy for newer players? Because I think a lot of these team compositions, especially 2-1-1-1, as you've talked about in other videos, can be really good if you have a really stacked roster and you can build these really intentional teams. But what do you think is a better strategy for newer players, or do you think there is one that is predominantly better?
Well, and if I take some liberty and reference other videos, I have two
Yep.
videos up on my channel that are pertinent to this. One is say no to mono. I actually generally advise saying no to players to playing mono. The other one is why I say yes to mono. Why mono? Um, so one of the biggest drawbacks for newer players playing mono, and frankly even playing 3-2, is the lack of troop support. And especially later in the game, troops become so incredibly important, especially mana troops. So if you're newer to the game, or if you're even a long-term player and you're free to play or cheap to play, you probably don't have the investment in troops to actually justify doing mono. So what you're gaining on the mathematical advantage of those tech stacks, you're probably losing, because each of those tiles randomly selects a troop. So if you have a level, 23 troop and a level 5 troop, that little tile may select the level 5 troop every now and then, and that you're giving up a whole lot of advantage from the tiles on that. So it is far easier to stack troops and get your troops up to speed if you're using something much less than mono. So for newer players, I think maybe 2-2-1 or 3-2 would be more advantageous. I think the challenge that you get into, again, if you're either newer or free or cheap to play, you might not have as many selections. So like you were just saying, you wouldn't be able to build the same synergy necessarily to make 2-2-1 work.
Mhm.
Um, the problem I think with mono for newer players is it's kind of seductive, right? You throw 5 on there and you suddenly realize that your Little John and your Skittle Skull combined with 3 other heroes that are actually decent on attack suddenly have this power. Um, and it becomes a slot machine. And I think that's what gives mono a bad name, because you're like, well, I can kill a 4800 team with my 4300 TP team. I
Mhm.
just need 12 tiles on the board of my color and they're destroyed.
Yeah,
And that's an attack strategy. I mean, part of the game has a gambling element to it, but that is not why I mono.
yeah.
Um,
There's a lot of interesting things in there. The first one that came to mind was that you mentioned troops being really important. I do remember you mentioning that in the video that you're talking about. Um, and the interesting part is that I feel like most people, when they do get the troops in the roster, from what I've seen at least, this is not that I've actually sampled, but from my recollection of what I've seen, a lot of people tend to move away from mono at that point, which is interesting. And I think a lot of people, when they don't have the heroes, go for the gambling angle and throw as much on there as possible. I think that's where the approach that you take to mono is quite different, because I don't see, there is reliance on only one color, so that's always true for mono, but I see more intentionality around, if I can get, like your green team, for example, you're like, if I can get 3 matches, I can almost always win because I can do a lot of damage at that point. So that's a team that has strong intentional synergy. It's not just 5 green heroes. Um, so yeah, it is an interesting thing to think about. And maybe this is a good time for me to segue into why I approach it the way that I do. And there's one thought I want to come back to after that, which is kind of how I view things overall. I think we had fun positioning this as the adversarial thing, but as was clear in the intro, that's not the
mm,
that's not the deal.
yep.
So yeah, my thinking, I don't remember when this happened, and in preparation for this video, I was trying to remember what my origin story has been for 3-2, and I couldn't recall, but I feel like I do remember in war. So I was making videos at this point, and I do remember going mono occasionally, and it was probably not the best team. It was sort of like, okay, these are the heroes I have left. Well, these are decent at least, so I'll take the color advantage. And just that frustration around when you don't get the tiles you need, you're just like, this is the worst decision I've ever made. And so I think a lot of people feel that way because, like you mentioned, to make mono as successful as possible, you do want to have high level troops and the right selection of heroes to put those teams together. So it's not just a throw on 5 greens with high tile damage and just hope you get the tiles and then curse the game when you don't get the tiles you need, you know. So yeah, I can remember that happening to me as well and being like, never again, you know. But the way that I've sort of moved, and this is something we've talked about at another time too, which is kind of like I've always wanted to find what I think is the right answer because I'm one of those people that believes that if you can get enough data, there is something that probably has a particular advantage. You know, if you can calculate enough, I don't know that I'll ever be able to figure that out or that I even care to do that anymore. But the way that I've moved in this process is, and what I really enjoy about 3-2 is I think of it as 2 mini teams. And I kind of like that if I do have a drought in one color, then I can rely on this mini team. And the best example for this, obviously, you have to work with the heroes that you have. And at this point, I do have a pretty solid roster. So that gives me more options to create strong synergies in pairs or triplets. But one of the best examples is my red purple team that is Black Knight, Garnet, Gravemaker, and then Freya and Bira. And with that team, the win rate is so high because it doesn't matter which of those colors I get. If I get a decent amount of purples, you know, I need 8 to get those heroes charged, then that team, 1, I've healed, 2, I have defense up, and 3, I'm dealing damage to them already. If I get reds and, you know, minions are kind of like over healing in that they add on top of the health bar.
Sure.
Reds, if I get even just 3 reds, now I'm protected against ailments and I've got fire damage going. And if I can get 3 more, then I've got Black Knight and I can, you know, weather pretty much any storm. So that's kind of the perfect 3-2 team for me because of, you know, it's not the most attack forward team, but it has these almost independently functioning units that also synergize well together. So I'd love if I could make, you know, 6 teams like that for war. And it's getting close, but that is a standout team that I've made that I feel like performs really well. But that just gets to the point that I really kind of enjoy one feeling like I have twice as many or my odds are twice as good because I can rely on 2 colors. And 2, it's kind of fun to try to find these mini teams that then also work together as well. There's synergy within the color, but then also across the colors. So does anything come to mind for you?
Sure. Yeah. I definitely have some questions for you.
Okay.
So, then you can use your prime example team there.
Sure.
Okay. When you attack with that team, whether it's a war or raid, the enemy is controlled by the computer.
Uh-huh.
Do you feel as a player that you play better than the computer does on defense?
Definitely. Yeah.
Sure, right? Absolutely. You're making better choices. They do random stuff that makes no sense. Anybody who's watched an autoplay, it makes you crazy, right? Because the computer is not that smart.
Yeah.
All right. So you can play better than the computer.
Mhm.
Do you feel that your team could theoretically beat any team out there, any defense team? Do you think that team could take them on?
The only hard counter is Vera Tanks because there's a good chance that she's going off before me and that cripples half of my team. But other than that, it does quite well, even against Scotty sometimes.
All right. So as far as TP goes, you know, 4,800 team, as long as it's the right team, you feel like you could take them out.
Yeah.
All right. So power doesn't make a difference. The gameplay does not make a difference. You have troop support.
Pretty well. I've gotten to the point after that Hamgate scandal, which I was fortunate to pick up. I got 23 and 2 11s in each color, and now I'm working the second set of 11 towards 23. I've got a couple at 17 so far.
All right.
So above average, but not crazy troops.
So now I have my hard question for you.
Uh-oh.
If you play better than the computer, you have appropriate troop support, you're not, for the most part, afraid of taking this team against anybody. Why do you ever lose with this team?
I don't ever lose. So
you never lose.
We'll
that team is
from this question. No, I see where you're going, and that's a good point. Why do you ever lose? Because even in 3-2, you can still knock at the colors you need sometimes. and that's where like that's definitely a valid point. I think I've never done my own, data sampling for this, but the way that it feels, at least, is that I'm twice as likely to get something going, because I have two colors I can rely on. But that's sort of the crux of the issue. There is like, are are those are those odds significantly better, or is it a perception thing? And I'm not sure, to be honest, as someone who is quite honest with myself about those things, and calling myself on bias as often as I can. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've been thinking about this a lot lately, predominantly because of the new raid formations,
mm,
and a vast majority of my regular raiding every day now is with my killer nature team.
mhm,
And I used to refer to it as my 9-tile killing team, and it actually isn't. It's a 7-tile killing team. And it has to do with the nature of the relationships of the mana nodes on the hero, the troops that I'm using. But 4 of my 5 are fully manned in 7 tiles. And that's super important, because 7 tiles is actually just 2 matches. If one of them is a 4,
mhm,
or, and this has been very fun for me to do, I have actually another option, which is every other color on the board now, because if I get 2 regular 3 matches of nature tiles, that's 6. But if I can make a diamond in any color next to just a single hanging out nature tile, because whatever we pick, we sometimes have those random ones sitting on the board. I have often been able to make a diamond a dragon
mhm.
tile in another color and just
Like
pop
that.
that one, and I get mine up.
Yeah.
So 7 is an important number to get to.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but there's another reason, and you're going to love this, why 7's an important number. With the evidence that you've seen and through your own game play, do you accept that the starting boards are in fact random?
I think so.
Yeah. So, and I've done extensive testing on that. The boards are pretty much random. How many tiles are on a starting board?
35.
And if they're randomly,
7.
equitably
Yeah.
distributed, it's 7, right? So, and my math has shown over time, over many, after hundreds and hundreds of documents, I did 2 studies. The largest was 350 starting boards. Mathematically, over time, you are going to average out to have 7 colors, 7 tiles of each color. Now you're going to have those gift from God boards where you have your colors are everywhere, and that's what people think mono's about. And you just wipe everybody out in 2 moves.
Mhm.
And then you're going to have those boards that have no tiles, and you have a few moves to shake it up. And if you don't, you're going to lose. But 3-2, you're going to lose too if you can't shake it up. Um, but if I get my mana troops to where I need to in each color, and I get the mana nodes on my heroes that I can get everybody fired up in 7, on average, I'm going to get the tiles that I need. And that's why that team wins a predominant number of its battles. Now, you
Mhm.
can all laugh at me today because I posted my war video today and I open up with my green team now. And
Mhm.
I started with, I think, 8 tiles. I made a connection right away and I still lost that. I played too fast. I don't know what I did. I have to go back and look at that video.
Uh-huh.
But somehow I allowed victory to escape my hands.
Uh-huh.
But right now, I don't know where I'm at now. But when we started this video, I was global 1. I tend to race up there on a Sunday,
Uh-huh.
and I have done all of my fighting today with that nature green team.
Yeah. Double formation gives a huge advantage to those. I think we'll
Uh,
have to do another video talking about formations and what's
sure.
dominant.
Yeah, the formations make it truly killer. So I've been working on the most logical thing I could think of to work on. I'm actually duplicating that nature team. I just recently maxed a second Evelyn and a second Toxicondra, and I got Frigg and Costume Elkinen, a second one's up to 370. So they're waiting for tonics. Now the Hatter, who's my only average hero, he gets bounced sometimes for Francine because she's fast.
Yeah.
Now she's still an 8-tile hero. She's not down to 7. But so Francine will go on my second team. I usually switch those depending if there's taunt or a repost reflect, then I use the Hatter to steal the taunt or the reflect.
Yeah.
And a lot of people with these new formations are throwing Sif in the background, and then the Hatter appreciates that.
Yeah.
But
Well,
so
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, my point of all of that is the reason why I think most people still should not mono, because to build a team on that level and have enough troops to get 4 out of 5 down to 7 titles is an investment. It's either a monster investment in time when farming or a monster investment in money. I've done both as far as a lot of farming and spent a lot of money to get the troops there. But I will be, and I don't follow enough other players that mono to know where they're at. But I think it'll be interesting when we see, because we're getting really late game now. Like even the cheap to play players are really catching up with built rosters and built troops. It's going to be interesting to see how many other people have committed to 5 troops of each color to get those kinds of speeds.
Yeah. Well, something that I thought of while you were explaining that, which good points, and I appreciate that perspective. My first thought was, and then this is really funny to me, but my first thought was like, oh yeah, well, like you've got super good troops and super good heroes, and then I'm thinking of the team that I described, which is like all A+ heroes, and
Sure.
oh, that's fine. So that's the secret, everyone. You just have to have the really good heroes, and then it doesn't matter.
It's still a workable board.
Yeah. But yeah, you heard it here. Mr. Empires and Puzzles Books concedes that mono is the worst strategy, and 3 wins.
It is not the strategy I recommend for most players. And again, that's exactly why I have that video up, say no to mono. Frankly, there's a lot of people who play mono that I wish they didn't, because I think it gives the bad name to mono play. You know, I think I have enough videos up that show that mono's not always a fast game. I do have long games. You know, I do get into battles at some point. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about mono.
I think too that we are in the upper limits of how much people want to think about this game. Like I think the spectrum of dedication, I guess is the word for it. Doesn't feel like quite the right word, but there's a wide spectrum of people who play this game. Some, like someone commented on a video recently, I think it was my tips video that I put out, that was like, wow, I've been playing for 3 years and I didn't know about tile ghosting. And I was like, what?
Yep.
And so, and that's fine, you know, like I would never prescribe how someone else should play the game, or like what they are supposed to get out of it or something like that. I think that's what's great about it, is you can approach it however you want, and it can just be something you keep in your pocket for a time waster in line at the DMV, or it can be something that you play daily and you get a lot of satisfaction from, which is the camp that we're both in. And it's great that both of those are true, but I think we're in the upper extremes of how much we want to think about and strategize things. And I'm happy there, because that's what is fun for me, and that's what kind of feeds me mentally. But I think it doesn't, I think there can be bigger problems for people than just that one thing. Like team composition comes into play for both of them, and that is arguably a bigger factor, but then you have to work with the heroes you have, you know. So this is why this conversation is happening, because there is no one right answer. It depends on so many variables, and that's what everything comes down to. So that's what we think the value in this series is come listen, hear us present both sides, and you can decide, pick and choose the pieces you like from both sides or one side, and then go off and play and have fun. So yeah.
Agreed. And you know, if I could say one other piece on here.
Yeah, I've got a few questions I want to come back to still. I just want to reiterate that.
Neither 3-2 or mono are religions. You don't need to carry them around like a Bible and beat somebody who's not believing your side. That gets more frustrating. You know, it's like I put up a bad war video and people are like, oh, that's your risk of mono. I'm like, where were you with the last 2 wars where I had 11 one-shots out of 12? Like, of course, now people are going to call me out because those 11 out of 12 I just did weren't all mono, but whatever. That's right. So you were talking about the importance of team synergy in either of them. And there are a couple things synergistically that I think are highly advantageous to mono. So one, I will probably always argue to my death. What's that?
I'm saying, whoa.
What?
No, just kidding. Just you. No, I'm just joking about you making a strong argument in favor of mono. Just being.
Oh, gotcha. I gotcha. You lost me there. I was like, did I offend?
No.
But from a synergistic standpoint, you know, I will argue probably forever that elemental defense down is one of the most important specials in the game, and not just for raiding a war, but every aspect of the game. Elemental defense down can give a huge advantage, especially when combined with that color stacking. So 2 ways I think that is a more benefit to a mono team than a 3-2. One, if I set off an EDD hero, all of my other heroes can take advantage of that defense down. If you're doing 3-2, you only have one other hero or maybe two that can take advantage. And if they're a healer or something, then that doesn't really help much at all.
Mm-hmm.
Two, that greatly magnifies the amplitude of increase of the color stack. So we're elemental defense down, usually it's 54% down, and then we're adding on that color stack. That's devastating. The second synergy that I think is uniquely powerful to full mono is the elemental links. I mean, realistically, on a defense team, we're probably almost always using a rainbow, maybe doubling up two of one color. But the elemental links are kind of worthless on defense. They are frequently worthless in the events and things like that. Really, the elemental links to me become most powerful in war and raiding, where we get this added benefit. And that added benefit is magnified if you happen to have everybody of the same color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are good points. I don't think about the elemental links super often. I mean, I'm always going 3-2 for the most part. Not always, but that I'll get to that point next, because there is something I wanted to mention about how I think about it. But the first team that came to mind when you were talking about elemental defense down. So one, there's a number of those heroes that I don't have. Pretty much all the key ones I don't have. Panther, don't have her. Frida, don't have her. Evelyn, don't have her. So some of that was just the time that I started in the game. Had those been heroes of the month and I'd been playing for a while, I would definitely have them. And that's why so many people are like, I have 7 Fridas. And I'm like, cool. I just want one. But so that's just something that I just kind of have to adapt around, where that, like, I used Almer for a little while and was like, he's not really that desirable in that position. Like, I wish he had the dispel of Evelyn, which is really helpful sometimes. But yeah, so those kind of key foundational heroes for some of those mono teams are just heroes I don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that came to mind when you were talking about that was like, okay, I have like one team that I've been enjoying almost as much as that red purple team is a green purple team, which is Phileas Fogg, Kingston, who does have the element link, which is key, and Toxicondra. And then the purples are, essentially Proteus and Regard, kind of my favorite twosome, but it's Hell instead of Proteus because she's a little tougher and a little better. So I've got 2 healers, one in each color. If I can get purples first, I can, freeze them with Hell. But the fun part is the green side, because of Kingston's element link being really key and Toxicondra's passive mana gain. So what I like about that team is the Phileas Fogg followed by Kingston is almost always a guaranteed kill, unless there's some kind of overhealing, because even if there's defensive buffs, he dispels those first. So Riposte, Fence Up, any of those things doesn't matter. He can also work against Krampus in a pinch by removing the taunt. But what's fun is that I can kill a hero either because it's the most dangerous, it's the biggest threat on the board at the time, or I can kill a hero to create a ghosting lane, because I throw a green match through a ghosting lane, and then it's not immediately at the start of my next turn, but the following turn, boom, they're all 3 up again. And Kingston helps with that by giving his element link for boosted mana. If I had better troops, it might happen all in one turn. I haven't done the math on that. So he's a key part of that. I couldn't just put Liana in place of that, I don't think, and get the same effect. So that's a situation of elemental defense down being totally crucial and element links being crucial.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't have some of those same heroes to allow a different format of that to exist.
Sure. And if you are not aware yet, and I know you do a lot more of the advanced hero videos than I do, but there is an upcoming 4-star dark hero that will be EDD for dark. So yeah, all of you that are floundering around waiting for Panther, I can appreciate what a pain that is. And they keep adding challenge events, which push how often we see the opportunity for Panther further and further away. I don't know if did I ever tell you my story of how I got Panther?
No.
I chased Panther really hard. Like early in the game, when I realized how powerful Elemental Defense Down was, I spent a fortune on Teltalk and chased Panther and did not get Panther. And a few months later, Teltalk came around again. I'm like, I'm not doing this again. I did a 10 pull and I got 2 Panthers.
that was a similar situation for me with Garnet, where I was like, all right, I'm gonna spend and I'm gonna try for Garnet, and I did, and I got mica, I got cobalt, I got onyx, I then got a duplicate. And then I was like, I'm done. I don't want jade. I don't want more duplicates of these because I'm not going to level them. And it was like, all right, it's the last event. I was like, I'll buy this deal. I'll try this again. And then 20 pulls and I got garnet. And I was like,
I'm done.
yeah. So yeah, maybe they're listening to me and they heard me say that I was done. Yeah. So Sergi, when I saw Sergi coming up, I got super excited in the video because I was like, first of all, elemental defense down to all, so that doesn't help you with titans or events, but like for rating and stuff, elemental defense down to all at very fast speed, even without a mana troop. So he's going to be an absolute beast in the tournaments because all those purple AoE hitters are going to get a huge advantage. So he doesn't do any damage, but he's also doing defense down to all in under 6 tiles without a mana boost, which is crazy. So I think there's a good chance that he gets nerfed. I don't know if they make him hit only 3 or what else they can take away from him. I'm not sure. And I even had someone in beta check, like, all right, if I go full defense on his stats, what's he going to look like? And he's pretty close to a 5-star hero at that point, sort of an unemblemed 5-star hero, but
Right.
But yeah, pretty impressive. So that'll be nice. Oh yeah, so the one point I wanted to come back to when we were talking about, you said none of these things are a religion and you don't have to go around, attacking people about it. I think that's a great point to make. And the way that I think about it, so, for the purpose of this video, it's a much better argument and conversation when you make it this versus that, 3-2 versus mono. But ultimately, the way I think about it is as a sliding scale, where there are plenty of times where in the tournaments, especially 3-star and 4-star, I don't have emblems on any of those heroes. I don't think I put a few emblems on Kvasir before this pending tournament because I'm like, I might as well give him a little bit of a boost as a tank, and it's it only cost me 40 emblems or something. But there are plenty of times in the 3-star and 4-star tournaments where I will go 4-1. And why will I go 4-1? Because I'm like, I really need to kill this tank before anything happens, and I want to add a little bit of extra power to my tiles. So that is a situation where I'm like, I'm going to throw Little John on there because his attack stat is high, and just hope that helps out. But sometimes that's all you can do in those situations when you're totally outclassed with emblems. So I think it does let you hit above your weight. It is a gamble, but that gamble is my best option at that point when I just don't have the hero power to match the full 100 emblem teams. So I'm curious to investigate 2-1-1-1 a little bit more as I get even more roster depth. I've got the mats to ascend 7 more 5-star heroes. I've just been trying to decide on who. But I think I'll be more open to exploring that when I have more choices of kind of all-star heroes for those synergies. But yeah, that's my biggest point, is that predominantly in wars and rating, 3-2 is what feels comfortable to me. But it's a sliding scale overall where sometimes I'll say, okay, I can't win this tournament match unless I kill this tank before it fires. And to do that, I have to go more than 3-2 because I don't have, highly leveled 3-star troops or 2-star troops or whatever. So I thought that was an interesting point to make for me because it just, I think, more openly characterizes what has become a really entrenched debate for a lot of people, which is like, there's advantages to both sides. I move around in that I guess you could call it a tile damage spectrum a little bit depending on what the needs are. So there's no reason to only look at one as being the best, and I think that is hopefully what we're achieving in this video. Is there's value across the board, hear both sides, pick and choose what you like.
Sure, and everything in this game is situational.
Yeah.
And the I think the point of this is, Spock, you and I could debate and argue this for the next 3 weeks or 6 months, and I'm not going to fundamentally change how you enjoy your game. You are probably going to be playing 3-2. I am not probably going to be playing mono, but not because of this conversation. I'll get to that in a minute. But left alone, I would predominantly be playing mono. Um, and the point is, you don't need to convince somebody else that, and that's where I use religion as an example. You don't need to convert somebody to you to feel good about what you're doing.
Yeah.
In fact, and I never get this, like if people are so vehemently passionate about 3-2, I don't understand why they give me flack for doing mono. They should love that I'm doing mono because that makes me a weaker opponent, doesn't it? Or are
Hmm.
you afraid of my mono team?
Yeah.
Let people alone, let them deal with their thing. You can enjoy a friendly debate like this or talk about the benefits. There's good points being made on both sides. They're both valuable and they're both weak on a bad, terrible, unworkable board, which
Yeah.
brings me to what I've actually been experimenting more and more with. And it's not one of the ones that has been mentioned at all in this talk yet, because we're predominantly talking about mono and versus 3-2.
Hmm.
Spock has mentioned the 2-1-1 and the 2-2-1, and he's even referenced in his 3 and 4 stars that sometimes he goes 4-1.
Hmm.
But I have been thinking long and hard about my attack strategy ever since the Jabber J interview. Rainbow, there you go. Uh, and I've been thinking about my attack strategy. I specifically been thinking about it in the current meta. I've been thinking about it with folks like yourself, and I have alliance mates and leaders that comment frequently about take 2 healers, take 2 healers. Uh, when Error 4T did my war hits a few weeks ago when we tag teamed, when he was looking at my roster in advance, he's like, "You have this huge roster." He's like, "You don't have enough healers." I'm like, I have a lot of healers, but they're not. I know what he was saying. I don't have a lot of the 5-star healers that are maxed and have a lot of emblems. I don't
Hmm.
even usually over emblem my healers. So what I've been playing a lot with now, experimenting a lot with, and I've really been enjoying it, is actually 3-1-1,
Hmm.
where the 3 is my mini mono team, where I have my elemental defense down, maybe a defense down, and then a strong hitter,
Hmm.
and the both of the ones are actually fast healers. So I've been using Toxicandra and Garnet, which is an awesome pair because one prevents ailments and the other one removes them.
Hmm.
One's ninja, so she's very faster than very fast, and the other one is fast, but with a mana troop, she's even faster. Uh, and I've been having a lot of success with that, which is what led me to I just said I'm duplicating my green team, so I just maxed a second Tox and I just maxed a second Garnet.
Hmm.
And until I pulled Scatty this morning, I was about to finish my second Ariel because I think she's also an
Yeah.
exceptional healer because although she's average, she gives that huge mana boost. So I am looking at playing a little more with 2 off-color heroes and then a mini mono team.
Hmm.
And that I think might work for me just because of the troop support I have for my mini mono team.
So you mentioned 3-1-1, but that the healers were Toxicandra and Garnet. So what color mini mono is that? Blue?
Any of the other ones.
Hmm.
Any of the other. And then the Ariel can be substituted in for either of those when I want to use the green team.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Ariel, and I just changed the way I made one of my teams. Like I said, I've been working on my second set of troops, and I realized this early on because my favorite team used to be a red-blue team. But I realized early on that after Ariel fires, any fast speed hero charges in a ghosted match if they have a level 17 troop or above. And
Huge difference.
it's magic when it happens. So I used to
Yeah.
have Finley in that spot and would just get Finley going again. And if the buff they had was still there, he would just absolutely wreck them after that. So yeah, and those are options that a lot of people would say, God, I wish I had one of those. So we are in a fairly privileged position to have at least one of each of those heroes. I've pulled 3 Ariels, I think, and I've only leveled one so far, but one Toxicandra, one Garnet. Would love another Garnet. I think one of my favorite pairs in the game is Garnet and Black Knight.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to be happy with what I have because I do have a lot of heroes that a lot of people would want. But yeah, that was the question I was going to ask, or maybe we're circled back around to something we talked about before. I can't recall, which is times that you've experimented outside of that. And it seems like from what you're describing that you would agree with the point that I made before of these things are sort of a sliding scale. There's no fixed rule to one or the other, and there are advantages to delving outside of those comfort zones, even things that have been very successful strategies for one or the other. So I think I would say that's probably a good point to wrap. I feel like we've covered this thing pretty thoroughly, and I think if you are someone who's been trying to figure out what side of this you're on, hopefully we've shown you that there aren't two sides to this, that it's a spectrum. There are two focal points on that spectrum because people really drill down on those, but there's a lot of benefits outside of that, which can be challenging if you have too many options. You're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what my heroes justify, but maybe watch this video again or watch it again in the future. Sometimes a couple weeks later, revisiting the same piece of content can give you additional insights. But if you're interested in exploring the game that we do in the way that we do, which is to think about these strategy things and how can I get these advantages and stuff, then just poke around with these ideas and don't expect anything to come to you immediately, but just keep it in the back of your head, see what heroes you have, read the hero cards every once in a while. And I think this has the potential to help everyone at least feel better about their decision, or potentially have some fun experimenting with other combinations, which I think is where some of the fun can lie. And sounds like you're having fun with doing that same kind of thing as well. Any other final thoughts that you want to add in here? I've really enjoyed the conversation.
The big picture, I think, to me is everything in this game is situational. And if somebody says they have the right answer, then they probably don't know what the question was. I mean, everything's situational. I think a well-versed player would keep mono and 3-2 in each holster and be ready to draw them when they think it's going to be most appropriate. And RNG will still kick our butt every time, depending on the board.
Yep. Yeah, luck will always be there. You can take some steps to minimize it, but it's not going anywhere entirely. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you are subscribed to both of our channels. Please hit the like button on this video. It helps other people find it. And I think this is a conversation that is just good for the community. So I think more people finding it is a helpful thing. So hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, leave your support in the comments section down below. Again, make sure you're subscribed to both of us. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.